Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullrank, and every week I cover everything that's going on in the world of SEO. We're talking Google, we're talking blog posts, we're talking webinars, we're talking podcasts, we're talking tools, we're talking SEO, Twitter, communities, you name it. I'm on it. If you're into this stuff, please, as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give us a like, share it on the socials, leave me a comment, spread some love. I really do appreciate it. This week Google's got some explaining to do. Well, they're doing explaining. They're working on their documentation. We got some issues with documentation. We got some updates, and we got a whole lot of e-commerce stuff going on as we roll into the holidays. Have you looked at the SERPs lately? They're getting very, very e-commerce. They're very, very visual. We're going to cover it all. Let's dive in. It's always so fascinating how search results look different for mobile versus desktop, completely different experiences. So a little tidbit that I missed last week was Google's giving you the opportunity to provide a site name for Google search in mobile. So now if you want to and they actually pull it a whole bunch of different ways, but via structured data, love our structured data, or like the H1 or even the open graph, you can provide the site name and it'll pull it out and it'll show up above the domain. Now, if you don't do it correctly, or if you kind of break any of the content guidelines that are written in the documentation, it will just be the domain or sometimes even the subdomain, as you see in this like stream powered example, which stream, come on, get your site name up there. That said, cool little feature, especially for mobile. If a lot of people search for you on mobile, brand recognizability, you want to get that right. So give that a go. On Wednesday, another update. This time it is the October 2022 spam update. Basically, so with Google, their kind of spam algorithm, the spam brain, that's a real thing that was released in 2018 to, detect manipulative actions to, deceive people who are searching and send them to, actors in bad faith who are, doing malware and awful things or really crappy content or using techniques that throw you off in the wrong direction and is not a great user experience. So spam brain's always going, but sometimes they do these updates, these big kind of like, not a core update, but like a spam update that has maybe like a significant upgrade in terms of the capabilities of the algorithm. So maybe there's a variety of different new techniques or they're fluctuating the levers, but it's to the extent that Google wants to document it and let us know that's going on. Well, the Google spam update was rolled out on Wednesday, or started to roll out on Wednesday. And so you keep your eyes peeled. I can imagine in the context of any like AI content, which they mentioned with the content helpful update, or in the context of doorway pages or cloaking. There's a whole range of different spam. They have a really great page on the Google site that explains how they monitor and block spam. For the most part, they're getting much better at it. Not perfect, but there's that update you need to know about. So a few months ago, Patrick Stocks wrote this great article on the Ahrefs blogs talking all about the issues with Google Search Console and transparency of data, that there are tons of searches and clicks and keywords and data that wasn't revealed when you exported from Google Search Console. Well, Google obviously heard, and search associate Daniel Weisberg actually wrote a post that makes it a little more transparent, a little more obvious, and a lot of it makes sense. In fact, Michael King covered it a while ago on the iPullrank blog. But basically, what he talks about in this article on Google documentation, on Google Search Central, is about the two major reasons that you won't see the full data when you're exporting from Google Search Console or the API. The first one being privacy, specifically for anonymized data, and the fact that Google just omits those lines when there are searches that might expose any sort of private information, which you can imagine comes up more often than not, whether it's looking for something specific like a documentation data or like information about yourself or something like that, in the eyes of Google should be anonymized, or it's like you're the only person searching for it and they might identify like who it is because only one person searched for it. The second part of this is the quantity of data. You can only export about 1,000 rows from the actual product interface. You can actually adjust that up to like 50,000 rows when you use the API. There are some, and that's like per day, per site. There are some sites that hit that maximum. It really doesn't apply to everyone, but it's something to take into consideration. Google believes that the amount of data is a good representative sample, but there's reasons why the data is not transparent. I don't think this is one of those like Google being evil situations. So take that for what it's worth, but I appreciate their transparency by Daniel kind of explaining why it is the way it is. Are you shopping online already for the holidays? Well, Google is going hard on e-commerce. Last month at Search On, they shared all this information about new features that are rolling out. In fact, Barry Schwartz highlighted what Sade K found regarding like trending now showing up in the SERPs. So Lillian Racon actually highlighted a new feature. Google wants to keep you on Google, right? Like they don't want you necessarily to go and do all your research on other sites. They would prefer you do all your research while on Google. And so what Lillian points out is they now have, in the context of this like shop queries or e-commerce related queries, that are getting so many more filters. Like I saw this the other day when I just was shopping for, puzzles for kids, and you're seeing like branded filter chips coming up, and every all those filter options are coming up right at the top. So now if you see products, you can click on a product and still on the SERP it'll open up a panel on the right side that will show you so much more information that Google's pulled from the web, like places where you can buy it, reviews, product descriptions, any sort of details that you can pull from like, structured data or the Google merchant feed, like, prices, price drop, shipping, sizes, availability, like you name it. It's starting to flow into these like little product graphs that show up when you're doing any sort of e-commerce search. So if you don't have visuals, structured data, Google Merchant Center feed, information, product attributes, everything, you name it about your products, you are missing out on visibility. And if you notice, it also has things like, the brand. So if you're a brand and you've got retailers selling your products, you need to pay attention to what they're doing. We're going to talk a little bit more about e-commerce and Google and SERPs momentarily. So hold that thought. So Google loves keeping you on search and providing the most definitive answer. And if you've searched for like best author or best movie or best book or best SEO expert, you'll see these enhanced results that have a variety of visual images and give this impression that they are giving the definitive list. Now, it is very curious as to where they're pulling these results from. Is it from like a top list blog post? Are they aggregating a whole bunch? Sometimes, as with always with machine learning, it can be problematic. As Lidia Infante called out recently on Twitter, John Mueller, she said, yo, look at these best SEO experts. It's a bunch of white dudes, like literally no women, maybe one woman. It's a bunch of white dudes. And so the replies are both sad and hilarious in this Twitter thread, seeing everything from people defending why Google would do that and saying it's an SEO problem, to saying, yes, this needs to be fixed. It's been around for a while, a couple of fun like Photoshops. And of course, Lily Ray has been looking into this intently. I've had this personal experience as well, looking at best authors. It's very curious. What are your thoughts when it comes to that? Obviously, this is something that Google needs to fix. And in general, using best modifiers is very vague and very subjective and very frustrating. A lot of people had opinions of that when I tweeted that statement the other day as well. So what are your thoughts on best and the way that Google should handle those results? As all of these new kind of e-commerce enhancements are rolling out into the SERPs, it's important to pay attention to what's happening on your listings and about your brand in general. So for instance, Brodie Clark highlighted a few different instances that he's seen that to some extent are outside your control. Like it isn't even necessarily the structured data. It could be on retailers' pages. But basically, he pointed out 4 aspects that could impact your click-through rate. So it's not going to impact your rankings, but the visibility on search. So for instance, price drop rich results. If there's a price drop, then that can show up below your listing as a little kind of annotation rich snippet. Approximate price ranges. So this isn't even on your product page. This could be on a listicle or like an affiliate site where they're going through a bunch of products and they'll show the range of prices. Delivery pricing. So our own Michael King of iPullrank actually acknowledged this could happen like for free delivery, but then it could also show the pricing for shipping depending on the location. This potentially could create a lot of problems, especially I don't know if they're running into issues if they have different shipping options depending on the retailer or depending on the solution, and then return policies. So they can actually have information about the return policy. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of these little snippets appearing here and there all over the place. Google is really trying to enhance these e-commerce results. They've been doing it for a while with like local search results. For e-commerce, it's going to happen more and more too. So it's important to pay attention to what is showing up specifically for your listing, because it might probably have nothing to do with something that you're actively trying to. Another little Twitter thread that is extremely helpful is from Aleyda Solis. Aleyda pointed out that so recently you'll see more like guides and reviews that are actually outranking e-commerce PLPs. And she's making the argument that, brands and retailers should be creating more of this content. And obviously Google's pushing their buying guides anyway, so why not? But how do you find those opportunities? So she gives like a 4-step process for doing it. So for instance, using SEMrush, you can look at, what are actually outranking. You use Ahrefs as well, but like what is outranking you for certain keywords, and then you can identify those specific pages and then go to SEMrush's keyword gap where you put in, your own brand, your own domain, and the domains of these publishers and identify like where they're showing up that you're not. And you can start creating content specifically for those types of keywords because that's the search intent that Google wants to see. You can actually, speaking of intent, refine that using SEMrush for like informational intent and then specifically know the keywords, the informational intent, and the type of content that Google's looking for so you can create your own content that would match that and give you a better chance to rank. The example from Lidia is via Macy's, but those are step-by-step practical tips that you can do to understand what type of content you should be creating. Great thread by Aleyda. This week on the iPullrank blog, Andrew McDermott covered more about e-commerce when it comes to structured data and the Google Merchant Center and how they're working together with expanded eligibility for free listings, both in main organic search and in the shopping tab. So he goes into the details and talks about how they interrelate and how you can take advantage of some of those new search features that were provided via search on that Google is slowly rolling out that I mentioned earlier. So deep dive there if you want some practical actions on how you can go about getting in those SERPs and maximizing the visibility when it comes to anything e-commerce these days. Cool post. So Glenn Gabe took his stab when it comes to the algorithm updates and what's impacting what between the product reviews update and the 2022 September broad core update. Now, it's not unprecedented for Google to do this with Panda and Penguin. There was kind of like a 10-day overlap in 2012 where it was like bam, bam, bam. Recently, with the September 26th, when the product reviews update finished rolling out and then the broad core update started, there were tremors. And so it's really confusing for website owners to untangle the situation depending on the type of content, because there were situations where people did have a lot of product reviews that were impacted at different points, people who had no product reviews that were impacted at different points, that, the product review update, if you have a lot of product reviews, could be site wide, whereas if you only had a few reviews, it could be like URL based. ultimately, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of context, and there's a lot of it depends that Glenn tried to kind of piece out. That said, you can go down some ridiculous rabbit holes trying to identify what caused what, which is why with a lot of these, even if it hurts in the moment, you do kind of have to let the dust settle before you make any major adjustments. But ultimately, looking through at your content, making sure that it's helpful, making sure that it's quality, that's the way to go with this. But Glenn did his best and came to the same conclusion that Lily Ray and a lot of us are seeing when we're looking at how these updates impacted websites is it's hard to say specifically this happened to this. So EAT is one of those things that is really confusing, frustrating, mysterious for SEOs. Basically, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness is this ambiguous sort of concept that is tied to the quality rater guidelines that Google has put out. It's referenced in a whole bunch of documentation. And so Lily Ray put together a measurement of EAT as a Whiteboard Friday for Moz. And it's awesome. It's a very modern look at EAT and how Google is potentially and will be using it to influence the rankings. Not a direct ranking factor, but it is an influence. Specifically, she focused on expertise in her Whiteboard Friday all around like author value and how Google is using patents to look at authors and experts as entities, experts as entities that's being built out and how it might potentially use that over time to influence the rankings. She goes through a bunch of different ways that you can actually create experts, whether it's, Google might be focusing on, first party created data and reporting and research, how they have author pages, how they're like very focused on a specific niche, how people are linking back to them. It's a great explanation, a modern explanation of EAT and what you need to consider as an SEO. Highly recommend you check out Lily's kind of mini presentation there on Moz. So again, on the Moz blog, cranking out some good expert content, Logan Bryan did this article all about 5 worthwhile SEO tests that seem untestworthy. So what I love about this article, it addresses A/B testing for SEO, where first off, statistical significance, it's really hard when it comes to SEO testing. You need a whole bunch of data and very specific things to test. And even then, it's not 100% like pinnacle of science, as Logan puts, statistically significant. In terms of the results that you can see, a lot of these A/B tests are directional. They give you an idea that you're probably going in the right direction, but you can't say confidently 100% my test was the reason that the performance improved. That said, what Logan does is he kind of gives you 5 different ideas that you can run through how to test it and how to kind of get some ideas of whether or not you're going in the right direction. So his 5 concepts that are really interesting to test and worth considering are URL switching, content refreshing, content rearranging, moving your content in different directions, removing content, and then targeting featured snippets. He gives you step-by-steps. He has other articles that talk about like more significant in-depth testing, but ultimately take a lot of A/B testing unless you have like really intense procedures set up in place to take into consideration like a whole variety like SEO testing does or Search Pilot or we help set up at iPullrank. Take those into consideration, take it with a grain of salt, but it's still valuable for you to do. Great post, Logan, on Moz. Okay, so Moz is crushing it. Miriam Ellis put together an amazing kind of beginner's entry level look at Google Business Profile. If you do SEO kind of in a general capacity, and then you start focusing on local, you'll realize there are so many nuances to local that general SEOs are not familiar with. And one big part of that is the Google Business Profile. It has a variety of different features. It's been, updated significantly over the last few years, including the name. It used to be Google My Business. Now it's Google Business Profile. Miriam breaks down all of the advantages, all the disadvantages, what you need to know, at a beginner's level, some new stuff that's coming out, like insights to pay attention to and what you can't take for granted. Overall, if you work in local SEO, this is a must read, especially if you're just kind of entering that aspect of your SEO career. Check it out. So we already mentioned A/B testing for SEO in this episode. Another inexact scientific science is SEO forecasting. And Alexis Frankel put together a really great article on SEMrush highlighting how you can do it, what value you want to get out of it. Similar to A/B testing, while it's not exact, you can't predict the future and there's so many factors to take into consideration, it is directional. You can basically put this process into play to understand if you are pretty much investing in the right types of SEO campaigns. Alexis goes through the different metrics that you should cover, the caveats, like what to take into consideration, and how to actually use this to inform your SEO strategy. Like I said, it's not obvious. If we had, crystal balls and could predict the future and knew exactly what to expect, then we would be all, rich billionaires somewhere, which would be awesome. Someone should make a crystal ball. But that being said, excellent article on SEMrush by Alexis that you should check out if you want to kind of experiment with SEO forecasting and have it inform your SEO strategy. And in technical SEO tools, Lee Foote, generous Mr. Developer Coder, sir, basically made available his website migration mapping tool that what he did is he wrote the source code for it. Basically, it pulls from two different screaming frog crawls, like one from a staging site and one from the live site, and then compares them and identifies places where you can, the best places for, H1s or page titles, URLs with fallbacks as well. Seems like a really cool tool that is open source and free to use. So kudos to you, Lee. Buy the man a coffee. Appreciate him sharing that, and you can find that links in the description notes. In the world of Rankable, had another great episode. Last week, I interviewed Marco Giordano. We talked all about using your coding skills as an SEO to be a better storyteller, to surface insights, to talk to the C-suite, to do SEO processes. Marco's been doing it for a hot minute. He builds all his own tools himself and really proves that being a coder, knowing how to code, especially with like Python or R, is a real competitive advantage for SEO. So if you're interested, if you thought about it, check out that episode, see some of like the tools that he's built. He talks at length about it. Really smart dude. And then another round two of SEO Battle Zone, which is a fun new video series we've been doing. You should check it out. It's basically I play referee when Mike King and Zach Chahalis of iPullrank basically go hard on different topics in the world of SEO. This week, we talked all about SEO, Google's documentation and why potentially it's problematic, how they would solve it, and what you need to take into consideration if you're using it as gospel or best practices, and whether or not it's always telling the truth. Do they update it enough? The guys go hard. It's a great episode. Watch all those insights there. And this Friday, there's a webinar for iPullrank. It's Entity SEO. We've got Cindy Crum, we have Ruth Brodie, and our own Michael King are going to talk about how to do Entity SEO. Nobody taught you at Entity SEO. Well, check it out in this webinar. It's free. You can sign up. The link to register is in the description notes. That's it. It's another episode of the SEO Weekly. So much good stuff. How fun is this? As always, my name is Garrett Sussman of iPullrank. If you are into this, if you've enjoyed this stuff, if you can't get enough SEO, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a like, share it on social. I truly do appreciate it. And give me a comment. Let me know what you think, if there's anything that I can do to improve this show. Appreciate you for watching. You have a great week, and we'll see you probably at Halloween, maybe the day after Halloween. We'll see. Peace.